Okay. Call the meeting to order. Let's stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Chair Shelley Kaiser present. Vice Chair David Willman absent. Secretary Mindy Noel present. Oh, here, I answered for you. Deb Christie. Here. Janice Howison, absent. Non-voting member, Gary Centara.
Here.
And our liaison, Jake Crane.
I'm here.
Okay, we have 3 voting members out of a committee of 5, so we have a quorum.
Okay.
So we did have a agenda, and that was posted with the village, and we have copies here. Would you care for copies? We have extras. Okay. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? No. There being none, is there a motion to approve as written?
Motion to approve is written.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. We have received a copy by email of the minutes of the previous meeting, and I don't believe there were any corrections at that time. Are there any questions about the previous minutes, previous meetings minutes?
I just want a clarification thing, and I don't want to mess this up since I'm a non-voting member. Can I still make part of the board?
I don't think so. A non-voting member.
Okay, so without me, you still have an.
Yes,
okay,
right.
good. I just
We
wanna
have
make sure.
3 out of 5.
Okay.
Okay. And you wouldn't be able to make a motion for second as well.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
So if there's no discussion of the,
Just for clarification, we're happy to have Mr. Zantara's comments, but our village rules specify you have to be a voting resident, and he lives just outside of the village boundary, so we're happy to have him serve on the committee, but that's the reason for the non-voting member status.
okay, so I'll talk slower now because Mindy has to get something from her.
Sorry.
Yeah. A motion please to approve the agenda. Sorry, we already did that, the minutes from the prior meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes by me.
You're not allowed to second either.
And I'm not allowed to vote either, so you can have.
Okay, well.
Do we have,
Go ahead.
well, I was gonna say, in the meantime, do we have a copy of the current draft, and are any of those printed out? I might have Rocky print 1 or 2.
I have 9.
Or 3, sure. Let me see if I can,
And it
Make a couple of
actually has
copies.
the latest 2
Is that
revisions.
the
of it.
5-page one?
Pardon?
Is that the 5-page one?
Yes,
Okay, I got it.
should be 5 pages.
Yes.
yep, okay, let me make a few
Thank you.
copies. Excuse me.
So we're waiting on a second to approve the minutes, Mindy. Because I don't think I could.
I second.
As president, what?
Do I second? I second.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We approved the minutes of the previous meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
We're very casual here. And then, comments not pertaining to items on this agenda. I have one, it sort of pertains. I received an email from Rocky and a text from Jake that are the village workshop meeting in which at which our proposed ordinance was going to be presented for discussion by the village council. Scheduled for Thursday has now rolled forward to next Tuesday at 2, I believe, which is the 27th.
Okay.
So, and I'll send out an email as a reminder.
Do you have a copy of that ordinance?
Jake's making copies now. Yes, thank you. Also not part of the agenda, but would you visitors like to introduce yourself?
I'm Loretta Lamont. We have been here for 20 years. We live half time in Dallas and the other half.
I'm Charles Fiedler.
I'm sorry, couldn't hear you.
Charles Fiedler, resident.
Be very okay. And then later on, I'll introduce Mr. Geisler. Under old business, report on the status of the development of the Angel Fire Village Night Sky ordinance. Where we are now, we have been collaborating online with Google Docs. We reached after our last meeting. we all took a portion of the ordinance, whether it was definitions or penalties or, businesses or residences, our standards. Each committee member took a portion of that and then really did, research and kind of did a lot of seeing what other, communities our size in northern New Mexico did for their night sky ordinance, and also we branched out and looked at a couple in Colorado and Texas. That was all compiled by Deb, and then we have the last several months been going through and just reworking it, cutting out duplicate information, making sure that what we have is concise and clear. And so we are today at this point that we have it almost where we think we can't do any more. And and so from here, I think the process is that we will be part of the workshop meeting next Tuesday, a week from today. And then the village council will bounce it back to us. We may go back and forth a couple times. And then there will be, it has to go to legal.
Correct.
And then they will have public readings, at least 2 public readings, and then they will enact it. So we still have a ways to go. But the big part of the work is just about ready. We've been polishing it up. So under new business, I'd like to introduce Galen Geisler. Jake kind of ran into him fortuitously through.
It was, so, Galen is a member, I believe, of the New Mexico Dark Sky chapter. So Dark Sky International has state subchapters. And I actually talked to the chair, yes, Mr. Holtzman, who is a professor at UNM in Las Cruces. I'm sorry, at NMSU in Las Cruces. And his suggestion was that we get in contact with Galen, because Galen is involved in writing, Los Alamos, New Mexico is considering a version of a dark sky ordinance. Mr. Holtzman mentioned Albuquerque is as well, but it's a much larger ordinance because Albuquerque is a much larger town. So the thinking was that Los Alamos would be a better proxy for Angel Fire than Albuquerque. We're not exactly the same, but it was a great template to get, and he shared it, and we've since digested it and have integrated some of the things that we saw there into this current draft.
So at this,
Yeah, just a couple of corrections. The Los Alamos ordinance was adopted.
Okay.
In December of 22.
Okay,
And so it came into effect in January of 23, and it's, and the county council, the county staff are on board with implementing it. I think it's got a long way to go before everyone's in compliance, but yeah.
well, and you guys are a little unique in that Los Alamos as a municipality is a county and town kind of all in one, so there's a little more.
Well, that's not the only reason that makes us unique. It's a strange place.
Yes, it is.
that kind of, that glow may not necessarily be from lights.
It's a beautiful place, but it has some unique challenges
Yes,
for sure.
right.
Well, we really appreciate you taking your time and the drive to, through the canyon to attend with us. So you sent a brief email with a few comments you had on where our draft ordinance stands. Would you like to follow up on that and speak to us about
And I
that?
see from this paper copy that you've already.
Yeah, I tried to add in a couple of your comments, what we have, those are in green.
Yeah.
In green for you. Did you get a copy?
I didn't.
Oh,
Oh, it's not green, but it's kind of,
so we can hear here.
But you need
Yeah.
You need it here as well. Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, Mindy has it on her
Oh,
screen,
okay.
and so does
I've got,
Karen.
Yeah. I
Okay.
must say, I'm very impressed by. And, I don't know how much input you had from Dark Sky International or, from IES or any of those, or you just conjured it.
None,
on your own.
unfortunately.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
We
Like I said, each of us independently went to different resources. Gary, you probably used
I
a
went
lot
through
of Dark
like,
Sky.
and I'm a member.
Okay, right.
And
There were also, Taos Township has a version of a light pollution
Yes,
ordinance,
yes.
so they're not dark sky.
Right.
Las Vegas does as
Yes.
well. The other one we used, what was the town in Texas?
Fredericksburg?
What's that?
Fredericksburg?
Fredericksburg.
Oh, yeah.
But
The
there's
reason we
no-
use Fredericksburg is our mayor happens to have a property in Fredericksburg, so he was very familiar with their
Yeah.
ordinance and implementation.
McDonald, near the McDonald Observatory.
McDonald Observatory,
but it-
right.
And where my
What
thematic
town
shirt
is
today.
it? Oh, Fort Davis.
Fort Davis.
Fort
Oh,
Davis,
yeah, right.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In developing ours, we used, the model lighting ordinance from Dark Sky International, IDA as it was at that time. And also we picked, Sedona and Flagstaff and a couple of other
Mhm.
smallish towns, yeah, so we had a lot of resources.
Sounds like
that
a
we could
similar
draw.
process.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and the couple of things that I suggest that you put in are not in the Los Alamos ordinance because we didn't have the recommendations of that before. And one was that, shielding, it's not enough to have it just a horizontal plane, you should have it somewhat less than that. And some people say 10 degrees less is good, some people say 20 degrees less is better. So, I mean, it depends on how much you can, how much you can push for and how much how much of a consensus you can get, among the stakeholders and so forth. In Los Alamos and probably also in Angel Fire, we have properties at different grades, and stuff like that. And so, if you have 20 degrees, you're still possibly shining light onto somebody else's property. The other thing is that the shielding should be such that you don't see the source of light, the light bulb, if you're not directly underneath it. So you can see the light coming out of it, but not see the light source itself. And then the other thing was, about the spectral content of the light. In Los Alamos, we tried to push for a limit on correlated color temperature of 2200 Kelvin. That didn't fly. 2200 Kelvin is about the color that the old high pressure sodium lights had. This orange, sort of orange amber light. LEDs typically come out much whiter, much bluer than that, and so the blue light is much more deleterious to night sky and to wildlife and to human health than the amber light is, and so we had tried to push for 2200 Kelvin, and we knew a vendor. Crossroads LED from Oklahoma, who could supply 2200 Kelvin light with practically no blue light content. But that didn't fly, and so we compromised on 2700 K. I'm not terribly happy about that, but that's what we could get past the county council. The language that I suggested, which is on your BH4, that no light or a very small percentage of the total light's shortward of say 500 nanometers is prohibited. So that's a much more precise specification, and you can then show that to a vendor and say, that this is what we want in Angel Fire, and can you meet this?
It's measurable, and
It's
then,
measurable.
then if someone brings
Exactly.
forth a plan, they can say it meets the plan.
Right.
Or it doesn't meet the
Yeah.
plan.
What did you recommend again, 500 nanometers?
500 nanometers, yeah, I mean, some people say 550, but anything. You certainly don't want light at 400 nanometers. That's borderline between blue and ultraviolet. That's strongly deleterious. 550 is about green. Shortward of that, I would prefer to, 550 is right where the center of the sun's emission is. Shortward of that, it's all basically blue light, so, you want to be more in the, orange, amber light. It's warmer, it feels more comfortable, it doesn't have the kind of glare that, well, fluorescents have, you know, your skin looks better under amber lights, you know, and stuff. But, yeah, and studies of effects on wildlife and effects on, human sleep patterns and stuff like that are, you know, that we should avoid exposure to, bluish light, you know, at night. Comments about, yeah, the actual numbers in this, I was astonished that you would have a limit of 1,600 lumens per acre. I mean, that is,
That was off of a sample,
really,
yeah.
which municipality had that?
Believe it or not, I think it was on the IDA site,
Oh, really?
yeah.
I've never seen one that low. I mean, 1,600 lumens is,
2 light bulbs.
Right, I was looking at that too,
And I was wondering, was
but
that maybe?
it was on another ordinance, so I decided that was me.
yeah. I mean, if you can get away with that, you know, if you can get the buy-in, from that, I mean, I think that would be wonderful. It
I'll
would be
tell you my
all-
skin in the game. I got an observatory on the side of the mountain there. The less light, the better for me. So
Of course.
it wasn't been
right,
selfish.
Right, yeah, but, you know, I mean,
Hey, shoot for the moon and accept half the
I
moon.
mean, 200 years ago, you know, there was nothing like 1,600 lumens per acre, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it was practically 0 per acre, even if you had
There you go.
some campfires and stuff, but, you know.
Well, I thought with
think
proper
it's-
shielding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I hope that you can get that through. I mean, I would be surprised if there wasn't a considerable amount of pushback on that.
And I think we'll have to discuss it as a committee because
Yeah,
I don't want, I'd be concerned if the village council said, no way, we can't meet that, throw the whole thing out.
Yeah.
So I don't want the entire
Right.
thing being thrown out
Mhm.
because of maybe we're being inflexible on something that may not be practical.
right.
What do you think is reasonable?
Well, I mean, you know, Los Alamos, so in Los Alamos, I mean, it's a much bigger municipality, of course. And so, so we divided up the town into lighting zones. And, you know, if you look through our ordinance, you've seen that. And in LZ 0, no light,
Yeah.
right? In LZ 1, let me find that on here. LZ 1, lumens per acre, no, LZ 1 is 0. LZ 2 is 20,000 lumens per acre.
Okay, what is?
So
What is
LC2
LC2?
is,
Is that like, residential or business
That's-
or
it-
multifamily?
It's multifamily, it's town center, you know, I mean, yeah, so. Yeah. I'm surprised it's actually this. I think these columns got mixed up. Of these 0, 50,000, no, that doesn't make sense. It's funny. 16,000 lumens per acre in residential. So a factor of 10, so 10 light bulbs or 20, you know, 1,000 light bulbs.
So what is the maximum per bulb?
Oh, per bulb, 800.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're the same.
We're the same on the 800, but
But the
Yeah.
total lumen.
the total's a lot more.
Right.
Yeah. Mhm.
One of the things, so this is going to get presented at a council workshop next week. So
Yes.
we're presenting to the other members of council to see where buy-in is.
Mhm.
Does anyone have, because again, it's hard to break down for people what lumens and candela and distances. So having an example of what 1,600 lumens or 16,000 lumens is, either in number of bulbs or maybe better, are there any images that you're aware of that Dark Sky, either the international or state chapter might have of, here's what a 10,000 lumen property looks like at different distances?
I mean, Dark Sky International has a gallery of images.
Okay,
I'm always a little bit skeptical of those because, you know, you take a picture and, you know, you can dial down the exposure.
Mhm.
yeah,
And you know, so it's hard to tell, really,
Okay.
you know, unless you're actually there to see it. I mean, Flagstaff, Flagstaff had a limit of 10,000. lumens per acre. And you go to Flagstaff at night and it's quite pleasant, except in certain places where people are violating the limit and stuff, but for the most part, Flagstaff, it was the first internationally recognized dark sky community, and they did a fantastic job. But yeah, I mean, in Los Alamos, housing in the area where I live, in western area, is, sort of a third of an acre to half an acre per house. And, if I look around at my house, I have a lot more than 1,600 lumens. Most of the light is turned off at night, we don't keep our porch lights on and everything that is on motion sensors and stuff like that. So, yeah, 1,600 is, and I showed this to one of the colleagues that I worked on with on the Los Alamos ordinance with, and he also commented that his house wouldn't qualify. But he was, gung ho for it, he says, if Angel Pie can do this, this would be a stellar example for other communities to try to manage this. And we're pulling for you to do that. I would like to hear what the pushback is from businesses, for example, parking lots, you don't have big box stores here, I don't think. You do have some grocery stores, and they may insist on having their lights, their parking lot lit, at all hours of the night, which is just absurd anyway. But yeah, it'd be interesting to hear what the people of this community think about this.
Well, we have a couple of people behind
Yes,
you.
Yeah.
right
They're-
Yeah.
We're looking for feedback. This is very much a live session here and a live issue that's coming up. My impression, and we didn't have a difficult time staffing this particular committee because we have a lot of full timers who have been
Sure.
annoyed, let's say, particularly with the short-term rental house lights that are on 24/7, 365. One of our committee members who is not here, was very adamant. Her neighbor across the fairway somewhere on the internet, he found something that told him, hey, I need to keep the bats out of my attic. And he put red and blue blinking lights all over the back of his house to accomplish that, keeping those bats out of his attic. So she goes to bed one night and thinks the cops are driving down fairway number 11. And so we're of two minds.
Yeah.
We only have about 1,000 year-round residents,
Mhm.
okay? With the part-timers, that doubles, if not 2.5 times. So most of the light trespass that's going on right now are not voting residents. They're property managed, short-term rental or vacation homes. And so we have a slightly different setup than Los Alamos in that the people who are deciding this are not necessarily the ones who are creating the light themselves. So, but I would love to hear, what you guys think of this or what your reasons for attending or.
Absolutely in favor of it. Have a neighbor that has 2 spotlights on their driveway that are on 24/7. Shining out through the woods.
Yeah.
And I go out on my deck trying to see the stars and I'm blinded by her spotlights.
Yeah.
And she's a full-time resident and been here forever. And how do I accommodate
Sure.
something like that? She's wanting security, I'm sure. But,
Motion sensor.
then another one up the hill has motion sensors so that every time a critter goes on their deck, the
Yeah.
light's shining right into my bedroom window.
Yeah, you gotta calibrate them so that.
Well, we have a very large elk and deer.
I know,
herd that
yeah,
moves
you
through
do,
up here,
yes.
and so I have one motion sensor light on my house, and the trees blowing can also trip it, so.
Right.
I mean, I'm trying to be a good neighbor and put a screen around
Sure.
mine on the driveway so that when I go out there with the dogs in the evening, it comes on, but it goes off 2 minutes late. And that's the extent of it, but trying to deal with that.
Were you in a similar situation?
Not from neighbors, because I really don't have their neighbors right around me, but we're on the mountainside, ski mountainside, so Lowe's, the building adjacent to Lowe's has 4 huge spotlights up there that you cannot imagine how bright that is. And they're on all night. And there's other lights also in that shopping area, but those 4 lights, and they're tipped a little bit. I was looking at them just before I came here. They're tipped just like that, but why can't they be like that? And why do they have to be that bright? So you cannot imagine how that looks from that side.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. And there's other
We have
lights
similar
as you look down to the village that are on too most of the night, but those 4 are to me, are the worst offenders.
This has been the tricky part for us is, we know we're going to encounter some resistance at some point, but we have yet to encounter any. Most of the comments we've gotten are like this, people who want to see the excess lighting dealt with, not people who have a legitimate reason for wanting extra light on their property, so.
So at this meeting, so do you have further comments, Galen? I'm sorry, no.
So, I mean, the other, so we get pushback from people who own parking lots, you know, and Smith's, for example, is horrible. But we also get pushback from law enforcement. That, you know, that they say that they need light in order to, apprehend criminals or deter criminals or whatever. And, you know, one of the policemen, you know, spoke to me after one of our meetings saying that, you know, he had found somebody doing something wrong and was trying to apprehend him. And the guy ran darkness and you couldn't see him anymore. I pointed out to him that the difference, you know, the difference between a lit parking lot and darkness is so severe that it's not surprising that he couldn't see him when he went in the darkness. And that if you dim the lights in the parking lot, you'll be able to see better in the darkness. And you know, yeah, I mean, that silenced him. And then we also, one of the other things we did was we hired, or the Los Alamos County hired Clanton Associates, which is a lighting firm from Boulder, Colorado, who specialize in dark sky compliant lighting. And they brought in a bunch of examples of places where crime actually decreased in areas which were more sensibly lit, which were not as brightly lit. And you know, and it's kind of obvious that, you know, if you have glare, things that are that you're trying to look at just simply disappear because your eye, you know, sees the bright light and doesn't see the shadows next to it. And so it's a lot safer. It actually feels safer in a place where the lighting is more subdued and you don't get such dark shadows. So we got pushback from the business. We got pushback from the police. There were some residents who, you know, like your neighbor probably who felt that they needed to have, you know, bright light shining all the time, you know, and I mean, what can you do about that? If more people, yeah, I mean, you know, to talk to the neighbors, you know, and try to persuade them that less light is better in a lot of circumstances, that helps, but sometimes you have some folks that are just intransigent about it and resent being told what to do. You know, I mean, there's a lot of that in this country, right? That people, yeah, value their own freedom to do whatever they want and don't take into account the negative social implications of that.
Could we go back? This was an engineering firm that was hired from Boulder, is that correct?
Lighting engineering.
And they specialize in this.
Right.
One of the questions that we're going to have to ask at some point is if we pass this ordinance, how much is this going to cost the village of Angel Fire? Primarily in streetlights, we own several buildings in town that have exterior lighting on them. Were they hired to do that as well, or were they hired primarily for
They can do that.
Okay.
That's not what we talked with them about. I mean, because Los Alamos County has a decent budget, you know, and they have a schedule for retrofitting and stuff like that, I mean, we put in a 10-year amortization clause in the Los Alamos ordinance, and you have 2 or 5 year, depending on how you read it. So doing it on a shorter time scale makes it more expensive. You know, because we have to get it done, you know.
It does, but I mean, we're a tenth the size of you.
That's right.
So, but I'm,
Yeah.
right, I'm sure at some point, someone on council other than me is gonna say, okay. All aside, what's the bill?
What's
You
the
know,
bill?
how much is this gonna cost in streetlights and modifications? And I don't think we're as worried about, you know, if we have to change out some lights on, you know, $100 fixture here or there. It's
Yeah.
primarily the streetlights that are.
Yeah.
Is there do you know, or is there a budget of what a properly installed modern streetlight cost per? Is that something that you would have, or?
I don't have that on my top.
Okay.
Yeah, but, yeah, I mean, we could get that number, but,
It would be helpful, I think, to present at the work session, because we could drive down one road and count our streetlights. It's not gonna take us very long to get a count of streetlights, but, is this a $10,000 per, a 5,000? Yeah, I don't.
Yours aren't that bad.
They're not that bad.
They are going up.
On 434, but however, going up towards the resort, they're an old globe style. It's meant to look like
that's worse.
that
Yeah.
Singing in the Rain style,
Right.
streetlights.
Oh, another thing I was gonna ask is, the ski resort, are the ski runs late at night?
But only one,
Uh-huh.
they are, but they're done by 7 or 8 o'clock.
Yeah, they shut them off.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's nowhere near our time. cutoff.
Okay, yeah. Mhm.
I do have a question, Jake, you probably remember you asked me if I could find somebody that could subsidize the changing of the lights, and I couldn't find any, and I was gonna ask you, Galen, if you know of anybody, and I was in it when it was still IDA, now it's DSI, do you know anybody there or any contacts where there's any sort of rebate or
For the grant writing
or even
opportunities.
some federal or
Right.
state?
I mean, Dark Sky International is a very low budget operation.
Sure.
But they do have, a portfolio of granting agencies that they talk to. In fact, the New Mexico chapter, of IDA was, or DSI now. I still was confused. The New Mexico the formation of the New Mexico chapter was underwritten by the Carol Petrie Foundation. But I mean, they gave us enough money to hold a conference last year and another conference this year. So it wasn't, money for outfitting a village with streetlights. But I mean, there are organizations that can do that. I mean, and the Audubon Society and other places that are, Xerces Foundation, a bunch of, wildlife and bird, pollinator organizations and stuff like that. They're very interested in preserving night skies, and so they have contacts, I believe, with people who have deep pockets. So that's, yeah, I don't run in those circles.
Well, one question I had, as our draft is written right now, it is essentially, if the ordinance is adopted, it will be effective within 30 days. And then it gives a 120-day look back for active permits. And I think that might be a little too short for us. One of the challenges we have in home construction up here is it's 2 to 3 years to build a home. And we have a lot of people who avail themselves. New Mexico allows owner builders, you can build a home yourself and sub the pieces out. So when you guys enacted, did you look back further than 120 days, or how did you handle the homes in process? Or did you just, here's the cutoff, and if you're in before, you're into the grandfather
Right,
clause?
we, the latter. I mean, it became effective January 23rd of 2022. And yeah, I think that's right. And there were a bunch of things that were being constructed at the time, which we would look at and wish we had
Sure.
done it a year before, but But building, you know, there was building projects that were going to be submitted, you know, which then had to comply with had to submit the proper lighting plan and stuff like that to the county staff stuff. So, and I talked to the a couple of times with the Director of Public Works at the county, and she's told me that you know, people are complying, you know, so that future stuff that goes in will be compliant.
Sure.
You know, they've done that here in the resort, RV park.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I had to go and tell them, you know, when they were building it, I talked to the main contractor, and he says, we're gonna comply with New Mexico state law. And he said, well, I'll be watching. And sure enough, they did, and I went down and complimented them. So it's nice to know there are people willing to do it.
Yes.
Even for profit and home companies.
Well, and I think for a lot of our homeowners, or a lot of our builders, I should say, the right way for them to look at this is you just need to sell your buyer a lighting package that is in compliance, whether that's sensors or timers or quantity or whatever it's gonna be, that this is, we're not taking money out of your pocket as a builder. If anything, we're probably putting, you know, better lights in that are going to be more costly.
Yeah.
Not just how many 3-inch can lights can we throw everywhere, so.
One thing that the New Mexico Dark Sky Council is pushing is astrotourism. And you know, you have an observatory, you'd like to look at this stuff. Lots of people come to New Mexico for the dark skies. And you know, there's this cosmic campground down by Silver City, and another one by Reserve, and there's one going in up towards beyond Las Vegas, towards Capulin. You know, there's, I mean, Angel Fire has a lot of potential in that regard too, because it's, you know, it's far from centers of population, and also as you pointed out, with the number of roads coming in, you know, that's all because you're in a valley,
Yes.
in a bowl. And so that gives you a lot of natural shielding from
Yes.
from the lights of Albuquerque and Santa Fe and Taos. Yeah, I mean, I think this would be an ideal place, you know, for an entrepreneur to come in and build an astronomy village, like they have at Cosmic Campground and these other places.
We have talked about the tourism aspect of this.
Yeah.
We're currently in talks to take over the airport from the county. And you know, what the Leonid shower was last week. That, you know, for every dollar we spend as a village on events, we get 2 back. Some of it's GRT, some of it is liar's tax money.
Yeah.
So doing events like that
Yeah.
is something the village has quite a lot of interest in, moving forward, because they're not expensive events to put on.
Right.
And if you can find a partner of a campground or something,
Yeah.
that makes it even easier.
Yeah.
But because we're a tourism driven town, we're constantly on the lookout for events that will bring people in our shoulder seasons.
Right.
What would the village do with the airport?
So we would take over running it. Right now, the county runs it. The county did something similar. There's an airport between here and Raton, and they wanted to close it. And the gentleman that owned UU Bar at the time kept that from happening with private donations. We have seen a dramatic drop in our military flights in and out of here. About 1.5 years ago, the refueling truck broke and the county didn't fix it. And so we stopped selling the Air Force and Army fuel there for several months. And it was like, hey, that was nice revenue. Why did we let that go? So we would like to take it over and manage it to increase the air traffic coming in. It is a tricky airport to get in and out of because of the elevation and the crosswind situation, but we would look at it as it increases our property values for sure, and it would give us another facility to do events like this. You know, we do the balloon festival, Father's Day weekend, and we utilize those facilities for that. So we're looking to take it over primarily just to increase its usefulness to the village. It probably would have happened sooner. I don't know if you know this or not, but there was a grant given to this airport there will be charter flights beginning between Albuquerque and Angel Fire at some point in the future. I don't know when. There's lots of paperwork and red tape between now and then, but apparently there was I think it was a $1.4 million award for rural air service. So that's coming out there as well.
So, go ahead, did you have?
Well, so I was just want to make sure we caught all of your comments, and I know we saw them in email, but the 1600 lumens was one, the temperature was another, and then there was one more
The
comment.
angle,
The angle, okay,
healing.
the angle. Is there, because we do have that, the valley floor where you're sitting right now, we're about 8,500 feet. We have homes up in excess of 10,000 feet,
Yes.
so you can get quite an acute angle there, and it's what creates a lot of it. Is there anyone that has done, I know we want to not see the bulb is one way to write it, and then the 10 or 20 degrees. Has anyone gone hyper strict on that with such acute angles that you're aware of, or are we?
Not that I know of. I mean, you know, so for the house that's 1,000 feet higher than the one below, for one thing, the attenuation is gonna help you because it's not gonna be so bright, you know, when it gets to you. But the other thing is that you can adjust the shielding in that direction. You know, so that it doesn't hit a property, you know, it's more relevant when you have a house here and a house here that are just sort of adjacent on a hillside. You know, so you adjust the shielding on the downside so that it's not seen by the people down here. So that's gonna be stricter than 20 degrees. But just to make sure that the light is confined to the property which it is, which it's on, you know, it doesn't trespass onto another property.
So we do something similar. We right now have a municipal code against galvalume roof. There's a maximum reflectivity of metal roofs.
Oh,
For the same reason.
yes.
That high incident angle of the
Right.
sun hitting and
Oh, my gosh,
bouncing.
yes.
So we do that currently.
So if you want to look at a very intense one, pull up Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Okay.
Did a project up there a couple of years ago. It was dealing with industrial lighting and it's significant.
Okay.
And a lot of it is on the temperature of the lighting and the lumens so that you don't have it moving away. But their development code is significant.
I haven't looked at that one, should you?
Yeah, it's a good one.
So you lived up there or?
No, I was doing a project in the county up there,
Okay.
and dealing with lighting.
So at this time, Jake, are we allowed by village codes or whatnot and during conducting a meeting to go through some of these line items and modify what we have? And I'm kind of glad we end up having an extra week between now and the workshop meeting so that we can present a more, a newer, you know.
Yep.
Version.
So yes, you are. You have a quorum, you have an official meeting going, just to keep the end date in mind. So a week from today, there will be a work session.
Right.
What we're aiming for from that work session is buy-in from 2 more council people. You have 1 here and you need 2 more for voting purposes. The first step that council is gonna ask this to take to is to go to legal. We have a new, you know, on-call legal firm now, so that's gonna be their first step is here, go through, see if there's anything in there. What they're gonna be looking for are things like the 1600 lumen cap and places where we're far more strict. We got into this recently. We had to redo our moving violation amounts. That's done. So the municipal code gives us the authority and the rationale to write moving violations. But the fine amount for those violations is set via resolution, okay? And so we have to every year or so re-adopt a resolution affirming, raising, or lowering fines. One of the ones I pushed quite hard to raise was everywhere else I've lived before, passing a school bus with its stop sign out is a massive ticket. In the state of New Mexico, it is a very inexpensive ticket.
Really?
Yes, in fact, in Angel Fire, it was more expensive to get a ticket for parking in a handicap spot than passing a school bus. It was $200 to park in a handicap spot and $150 to pass the school bus. So council wanted to raise it unfortunately, the maximum municipal fine you can allow is $500. But the recommendation was made that we not jump to the strictest position because it would give legal rationale to fight us in the court system essentially. And so we ended up adopting $350 is now the fine for passing a school bus, and we'll see if we can work it up over time there. But there is some discretion on council's part to consider, okay, if we're going to be the most strict place in the state and our attorney comes back and says that's a little legally tenuous ground to be standing on, that may be the recommendation, and the modification is, you know, hey, if Los Alamos is, yes, they're 10 times or 20 times the population we are. But I think what you're gonna see is if this is 2 light bulbs, because at some point that comment's gonna get made in a work session. What do those council members who see that think? Are they, yep, are you seeing nods the right direction, or do they kind of sit back in their chair and go, wait a minute?
On the other hand, this would be a good time to do it when we still have a low population.
Correct. It's way better to do it now than 10 years from now. But finding something that will pass a council vote and then legal muster, those are kind of our next 2 big hurdles. I think we have a pretty good draft of a document here, but it's getting it across the
We
finish.
have a few points that I think would need to be modified at this time before it gets to the
Sure.
workshop meeting. So if we're ready, we can go through some of those
Yep.
and hopefully knock them out. In no particular order, because I've been writing them down as we talk, but the copy that I gave to Jake, the copy, and then what, go ahead.
If I could,
Yeah.
and just because you guys are as a committee, if you're gonna vote on these, and I would recommend you do, the strategy here you're gonna have to think of is, do you want to recommend something that is, you know, Goldilocks and the 3 bears, right on point, or do you want to come in a little aggressive or a little under? So I don't know if there's I mean, I think we've got Mr. Galen's input in that. That's great to have. But how you all feel about these caps
Right.
is headed to let council look at. So consider where you want that to be just strategically.
And that's part of what I'd written down, the
Yeah.
things we need to consider as a group. But I think an easier one is, we have our definitions that are specific, and then my understanding is the code itself has a section of definitions, and then this
Yes.
would just be in the definitions code rather than in our section.
Right,
And so under fully shielded lighting, as what we had originally, or up to this point written, was that lighting fixtures that prevent light trespass, sky glow and glare, a fully shielded light fixture is a solid barrier shield covering the. And then, what I'm proposing we add is a quote that, Mr. Geisler had, was so that no light is emitted above 80 degrees from the vertical. That is 10 degrees below horizontal per the IES recommendations.
yeah, because right now it reads covering the entire lamp bulb such that the light emitted by the fixture projects only below the horizontal plane.
Right.
And that gets
we
into
want to
our,
be more specific.
right, be more specific there.
So,
Well, and make the shield come lower as well,
Right. Or have spot shielding.
like we had it at 90
slopes.
degrees.
yeah, and so that's what the
Yeah.
new words would say, so that light is emitted. And so here I may need some help with wording, so that no light is emitted above 80 degrees from the vertical. That means 10 degrees below the horizontal. Is that what we're saying? Is that 10 degrees on each side?
Yeah.
Okay,
10 degrees all the way around.
so, but we could be a little more aggressive and say 20 for our
Yes, we could.
purposes.
Yep.
You could 20 or 30, yeah.
Or can we have a slope restriction? See those on mountain slopes.
That's hard, because then you're gonna have to, that may be subjective, well, you're on a slope, but I'm not, and define a slope, and is the slope 89 feet or is it 41 feet?
Well, I think that goes into light trespass, you know.
Yes.
Yes, so you can add something on light trespass that, you know, that no light shines on a neighbor's property.
So let's decide, and then Mindy will be editing as we go. So we can take out the words we had previously about such that the light emitted is not below horizontal. We replace that with no light is emitted above. Would that be
70 degrees. 70 degrees.
70 degrees?
Or
Yeah.
20, or you could say 20 degrees below the horizontal.
Okay, so we wouldn't have to say anything about light is emitted above something vertical. Cause you, and this is my lack of knowledge, it says. No light emitted above 80 degrees, that means 10 degrees below.
Oh, so you could say, no light is emitted up above
70.
20 degrees below the horizontal
Okay.
or something like
That's,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, so.
Okay, so
wording
take
would
out the
be
80 degrees,
So-
leave the 10 degrees, but.
such that no light
That's it.
is emitted
Yeah.
20 degrees below horizontal plane. Would that be
Above
correct
20
way?
degrees below the horizontal plane. So there's an above and a below in the same sentence, but it's.
So
we're
we
going-
would
we're
leave
going
the
with
above
20
and below
degrees.
phrases?
Yeah,
Yeah,
'cause
so
it's-
no light is emitted above 20 degrees below the horizontal plane.
Got that? Okay,
Yeah.
and are we going with the 20 degrees from
Yes.
horizontal or 30 or?
20 is better.
Okay,
Yeah.
20,
Yeah.
and that's fairly reasonable, I mean.
Yeah.
Easy, not easy, but accepted industry standard.
That wording has been used, yeah.
Go ahead,
So we
Yeah,
have
read
a
that.
fully shielded light fixture has a solid barrier shield covering the entire lamp bulb such that no light is emitted above 20 degrees below the horizontal plane per IES recommendations.
A diagram helps,
yeah, and
Yeah.
we're gonna.
right?
Our
We're gonna do
concern, we
this.
were gonna start doing some diagrams, but our concern was copyright. You know,
I
if
mean,
we just go out on the web and pull something.
well, the DSI has lots of images that
That
they
they'll let us
will
use.
let
Are they-
you use.
Okay,
Right.
they're not.
Do we need to
copyrighted.
get written permission from them or?
You know, it doesn't hurt to ask, but they're not gonna deny. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we'll have an
Yeah.
example of that.
Yeah.
And I think if we can, we'll just go through them one by one, the points that we might want to change and then vote in total rather than at each time. The other one that we've been really working around is under B, the general provisions, outdoor lighting fixtures, CI or C1, all outdoor lighting fixtures, lighting fixtures shall limit output to 800 lumens, and you said that's fairly standard. Thank you for that. Okay, yes, and it's all public stuff that you can get on the village's website
Okay.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
800 lumens per fixture, and you said that was standard, but not more than 1,600 lumens per acre. Since we feel that it's probably impractical, should we get practical now instead of?
So-
What do we think will pass?
I would say, a large number of the lots in Angel Fire are gonna be less than an acre. They're gonna be a half an acre
Or less,
or less,
Yeah.
not a lot less. But you have a large number of lots that are between 0.3 and 0.8 of an acre.
Yeah.
So basically at that number, that's one light bulb.
Right.
For that property. And you said Los Alamos is is it 16,000
I thought it was like
lumens?
12 for your residential, for one.
Well, they have different zones.
Yeah, but I looked up residential, and I thought it was 12, but
12, yeah,
12,000.
it's around, yeah, I think that's right, 12,000.
So the other thing to consider here, because our draft is written, there is only one zone.
Mhm.
This is
And I was-
everything.
I was gonna come back to that, but go ahead.
But because what we have what we call the overlay district. That is essentially our core commercial area from the resort. It comes down through and basically goes along 434. So you might consider here being a little stricter, maybe not 1,600 strict outside of the overlay district. But in the overlay district, that number is likely gonna have to come up at least to the Los Alamos level, I would say.
Well, and if we're saying everything has to be off by 10 anyway.
But everybody's gonna forget or leave it
Yeah,
behind,
true,
so
true,
if
true.
it's not there, then you can't forget and leave it behind.
Yeah,
To
So
start with,
yeah.
that would be my recommendation, I think, is that you consider maybe a 10,000 or let's say 8 to 16,000 for everywhere except the overlay district. And what's your commercial?
Our commercial is 20,000.
20,000.
Yeah, but I mean, our commercial is much bigger than yours.
Correct.
You know, and it's got, Smith's, which is just
Right.
enormous. Yeah,
But you see what I mean? I would have two hurdles. I would have essentially a residential hurdle and a commercial hurdle, and the hurdle being the overlay district is in our.
When you talk about the overlay district, does that include the condo area, or is that considered residential?
No, that includes the condo area. It does, because it's basically anywhere there's commercially zoned properties, and all up and down Bill Burgess where you have Macuna and, you know, those businesses in there, those are still in the overlay district.
Okay, but what about the condos?
The condos are in the overlay district, however, you could treat them, and again, this is getting, because you guys have a multifamily and a commercial and a residential. And see, I think at 1600, there's probably not a condo association in town that's ever gonna make that.
Right.
Basically, each light bulb by your front door, if you have 10 condos, each of those condos has a light bulb right by the front door. And in fact, it's probably required by code for ingress and egress to have a light by your primary door. So
Is the overlay district clearly defined somewhere in?
it is.
Okay.
The
so we can
overlay
say the
district-
overlay
Use
District
that
that people
word.
can go. and
You can
look
use
it up and
overlay
say-
district, yes.
Okay,
The overlay district is clearly defined in village code on a map, and it has lots of distinctions about things that can and can't be done. Where this came up most recently was the overlay district and its relationship to cannabis dispensaries. That was the last time we had anything to do with the overlay district that I'm aware of.
So what's the opposite term? You say overlay and then,
So.
what do you call it, non-overlay?
So everything else is a certain level of R1, 2, or 3.
Okay.
Residential 1 would basically be your single family zone only. They have different density requirements within municipal code. So an R3 is gonna be more like what the condos are. This is a multifamily, higher density. You're essentially in the R3, you're zoned at 20 units per acre. Whereas in an R1, you're at 1.
So, right now, anything that the village code says pertains to the overlay area pertains to then the condos would fall under that rule.
Yes. I
So
believe
we
so.
wouldn't have to have.
You wouldn't have to have.
overlay so we're just overlay or residential, basically.
Yes,
Okay.
now, the council may come back. For some reason we haven't anticipated, maybe there's I don't know this, but let's say there is a condo unit that is actually outside of the overlay district. So now which standard is it held to? It's not in the overlay. I don't know that that's the case, but as we're getting into it, those are the problems we're gonna trip over, right?
Yeah.
So,
can I read the proposed, what I have proposed?
please.
All outdoor lighting fixtures shall limit output, thank you. Shall limit
Thanks a lot.
output to 800 lumens per fixture, but not more than 8,000 lumens per acre for residential zones and 16,000 per acre for overlay district.
I like
I
that.
think that's excellent.
Okay.
So you're at essentially 8 light bulbs roughly per property on a single family home.
10 and 800.
I'm sorry, 10 at 800,
Mhm.
and then you're gonna be at 20 light bulbs on a overlay district property, still with the hard time cutoff as you
Right,
mentioned.
and fully shielded.
That would figure 20 units per acre.
Right, right. So I think that's a good
It's not
place to be,
arbitrary, that actually has some
right?
So 8,000.
rationality behind it.
And if they just want to get better light bulbs, they can light new places, just don't have your spotlight.
Yeah.
Like,
So-
Go down to 400 lumen bulbs and get twice as many.
Have you, and I apologize, I have to run to another meeting. We're seeing, I chair the architectural committee here in town, and so we do all the permitting review for architectural, within the resort boundary. We're seeing the tape lights get a lot more popular for exterior lighting. You know, the LED tape, then you can get a diffuser for those and other things, but
Yeah.
is that something that you've addressed? Cause I know of at least one builder that is starting to standardize on those more than the old light bulb style.
So we don't have a lot of that.
You don't have a lot of that yet, okay.
But, I mean, I think, you know. I mean, it's very hard to shield that property, isn't it? I mean, it's,
Well, so typically what we see them doing is they're putting it in the exterior soffits. What we're seeing is a move away from the 3-inch can lights that are
Yeah.
mounted into the soffit itself.
right,
Instead, they're simply running the track putting the diffuser in, it's still in the soffit.
It's in the soffit, so it is shielded.
It is shielded.
Yeah.
It might not be shielded to the
Yeah.
20 degrees below parallel, it depends on the
Yeah.
design of the soffit and
Yeah,
a few other
yeah.
things, but.
Yeah.
The upside of those has been, it's an easy way, when you buy those lights, I had two small children, and we ran those lights under their beds as a nightlight, because when you buy them, you can control the temperature, you can change the brightness,
Yeah.
and you can have a built-in timer setting, so you get some functionality for it
Yeah,
that
that's
you
nice.
don't get in a standard 120 volt, receptacle, so. Any other questions of me? I'm sorry, I've got to catch the manager and the fire chief on a matter quickly, but you're headed down the right path. If I can sneak back over here, I will.
What time is the meeting next Tuesday?
So the meeting next Tuesday is at 2:00. Yeah, it's bounced around, and I apologize for that.
I like that better.
Public notice, you gotta get all that stuff out there for meetings and things, so.
So I'd ask you to look more closely at our provision on the penalties,
Yes,
where we said that it was like $25 a day for residential, $100 a day for businesses. But then I read that there is a $500 cap maximum penalty. And then we wrote in there every 30-day notice, like after 30 days, you get a notice, after 30 days, you get another notice. After every 30 days, that's a new violation, so you could have 500 plus 500.
so,
Our thought process was, if someone gets to the maximum $500 fine, they go, I'll pay the $500 to
So-
keep my lights on.
So that's not the way that it works, because we've had this pop up on another code enforcement issue. $500 is the largest single instance fine you can get. However, if you're, I'll go back to the Galvalume roof example. We have some of those that have been put in illegally, and now we're starting to chase. And what we started out with is you're gonna reissue permits, and we gave ourselves the ability to assess a daily penalty. So that daily penalty is capped at 500. It's not the aggregate, it's not adding them up and you hit 500 and you're done. No, we can do $500 a day. And
Without limit, without cap, because we had written it that way at one time,
correct,
that after your first 30 days, $25 a day, your next, and then you get another letter, you get $100 a day, and then it just keeps infinitum.
it does, yes.
So
That every day constitutes a new
Get lien on the
violation.
property.
rather
Go away.
You can, the
No,
best
the-
example of this, so we visited Ruidoso for their fire adaptive ordinance. We're using that as a template for another committee I'm on. And they actually have
Right. But
liened,
saying every day
foreclosed, and collected
violation
properties
means you can keep
that
that
refuse to come in compliance with their fire adaptive ordinance. And now they're considering what to do with those. So what they first start out with a process they call clean and lean. So if you don't clean your lot, the village of Ruidoso will come and clean your lot for you, lean the cost onto the amount of the property, and eventually they can foreclose. And they're considering taking those foreclosed lots and building workforce housing on them. It's only happened a couple of times, but
We did that at Thomas Pines. We
Yeah.
had a scofflaw that didn't
It's just
care.
fair.
yeah,
And we profited big time.
Yeah.
From when they did end up selling.
Yeah.
That's usually what happens.
Correct. correct. The other thing that happens is, once you start assessing fines like that through the Planning and Zoning Commission, which you have now as a non-conforming property. It can be very difficult to get a mortgage on. It can be very difficult sometimes to get homeowners insurance if you're a non-complying property. So there's a lot of other triggers that can come from trying to ignore, fines like this. It's an important component, and I know, one last question. Yeah, I had a discussion with the planning and zoning manager. You can get a device that will measure lumens at a distance, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
And so the thought process here is, if we're going to put a number down, and we won't quibble what that number is. In theory, the practical application of this is we can send our code enforcement officer or planning and zoning person out. Set that, we don't even have to get on the property, set our instrumentation at the property line, document what the number is, and that should be sufficient. Is that equipment particularly expensive? Is it something you have any familiarity with?
$1,200.
Okay, so this is,
I mean, we bought one,
Okay.
and we have it, the, Los Alamos Nature Center bought it.
Got it.
And we've been going around, measuring.
Measuring,
things.
sure.
We did it in Los Alamos, we did it in Santa Fe, and astonished at how bright things were.
Yeah,
But yeah, $1,200, and you know, there's different ones on the market too, you know, that have different functionalities, but it's not, you know, it's not totally out of the question to have, what we came up against, however, was that, county staff don't work at night.
right.
You know, so we had to take it upon ourselves to, as volunteers, to go out and do the measurements and stuff like that.
So we've talked about that and allowing residents to take a photo and email it in as a complaint. This will get a little easier for us in the winter because it gets dark here
Early,
early in the winter. And so we're gonna have a lot better job of enforcing this December, January, February than we are June, July, August.
right.
But we wanna make sure that the biggest thing everyone is stressed is we want to do this ordinance, but we've got to make sure that the enforcement mechanism works and gets the results that we want. And so thank you for answering my question about the equipment cost. So,
Excuse me, I just looked on Amazon. They've got a light lux meter detector. They're $30.
yeah, I imagine,
Is that the awful?
BT meter, they call it. That's the name of the company.
There is one called the awful, which is about that price, but it's not terribly accurate.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I think this is much like if you've ever used the decibel meter on your phone, it's nowhere near as accurate as a professional
Yeah.
decibel meter. It's off by a lot.
Yeah, all these are in the $20 to $30 range. Well, here's one for 207, so. maybe
Yeah.
we get
Good
close.
quality.
I mean, the one we bought was, the Nature Center bought was, about 5 years ago, and it's a Konica
Okay.
Minolta. And it was about $1,200, but that probably has come down in price.
Okay. Well, thank you for answering my questions. Anything for me before I go catch the village
I
manager?
don't think so, and
You,
then.
you guys are on the right
Yeah,
track.
we'll do a little bit more polishing up and then I'll send it to you again. With the few changes we've had, and then if there's no further questions from us, then I'll send it to Rocky. Ask him to replace the one that I'd sent him before for Tuesday.
So I anticipate that next week this will get a favorable, though with some modification, potentially response from council. Off to legal will be the next thing that it will do, and that will likely, I don't know if we'll have that come back here to vote or not. But one of the things that we may want to figure out, and this doesn't have to be figured out today, but hopefully with Galen or the state level's help is. At some point, we're gonna have to have a presentation at council about this, that will have public readings, that we're gonna have to polish up a little. Those meetings tend to get more input from the community, and so we wanna make sure we have, you know, you guys obviously hired an engineering firm to do that, and we could do the same thing as well. If you would be willing potentially to share what those costs are with us, because we essentially have to go out and pitch this to the voting public that's not engaged and on this committee already, or knows somebody on the committee. So I think that after the work session, I guess the PR campaign will be the next thing to begin. So any help we can get either from the state chapter or the international chapter, or the Galen might be able to provide us via email will be, I think, important to get to that vote and public reading stage, which is where we want to
We
get
have
to.
an ace in the
As you
hole,
know, I
because
already
Gary
have
does
that
that.
presentation
Okay,
available for you. And I think you said you've got the compatible equipment now, yeah.
so yes, we can get you hooked up to this. We also can email it. So this laptop now lives out here.
Good.
When we first started, so if you simply email the presentation to Rocky.
Yeah.
It can be there teed up and ready to go.
Okay. I will do that.
Okay, sorry to run, but
That's
I've gotta
okay,
go.
that's okay. And I think we.
Thank you so much for your time and coming up. I
Thanks,
really
Jay.
do appreciate it.
Yeah.
And we will hit you an email for a few more questions, I'm sure.
Sure, you bet, yeah.
So do you have a timeline, Galen, that you need to be headed out or anything?
Well, I was, thinking that I might stop by Taos on the way home, cause, you know, they're thinking of going through the same process, and, you know, so I've set up a meeting with some folks there at 4 o'clock.
So construction zone here is gonna be about.
I know,
20
I
minutes.
came
Yeah.
through it. So,
So we need to talk fast and Mindy has an appointment. coming
Yeah,
up
I've
quickly.
I've gotta run. I was gonna say, I've got for this, street and parking lot lighting, H4, we had the suggestion there, and I have a little bit of a rewrite I was gonna recommend. What I have is LED lighting with wavelengths shorter than 500 nanometers. Parentheses, blue, violet, and then is prohibited. Just full stop.
Okay, well
I
then,
said 500.
Mhm.
Okay.
is that
Yeah.
say correctly what we need to say?
yeah, that's great.
Perfect. And then, do we, have we addressed in our language anywhere? Yes, we did. The difference between the overlay district and the residential district. That was in the number of lumens per acre,
Mhm.
but no other place do we need to address that, correct?
What do you mean by address that?
Just that there's a difference between the overlay area, the requirements in the overlay area and the residential area.
Oh, I think that's the only place where the requirements are different, is in that lumens per acre, so we should be fine.
And then, Jake was mentioning that he thought hundred and twenty days, so we're on. C, plan submission, G at the end. Any plans submitted to the Village of Angel Fire with 120 days prior to the adoption of this. Are required to be resubmitted to show compliance, and he thought that was a narrow time frame.
I'm good with making it bigger.
Do you have but you didn't have a look.
We
back.
didn't do that at all.
And so this look back period is 4 months.
Six months works for me.
Okay,
So it should be on it.
okay,
Well,
so that's 180 days.
Or 80 days, yeah, 6 months.
We'll make it
180
180 days. Okay.
Done.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you know, if people know that this is coming, you know, within that time, then they should be prepared for it. But, you know, I mean, I don't know when this will be adopted, you know, if it was gonna be adopted tomorrow and all of a sudden, you know, people had submitted plans 6 months ago, they have to resubmit, they haven't even heard about it, that doesn't seem right,
Right.
but, yeah.
That in, you know, and you probably face the same thing, Los Alamos building is very slow. So I mean,
Yes,
so,
Right.
so to revise a plan 6 months old isn't that difficult because it takes them 6 months just to put the foundation in.
that's true.
All right.
Yeah.
And then we did talk about, and between Mindy and I, we weren't clear, but if you guys need to go, do we need to come back to that about the violations?
So I have a suggested rewrite here as well, just for that number 4 at the bottom, and it's each day of non-compliance constitutes a separate violation. And the reason for that is just to clarify, like, if you get a fine for $800 because there were 8 days that you were non-compliant, that is not exceeding the $500 fine because it is 8 separate violations fines. You're just getting the bill all at once.
I don't think so. I think it's one violation, like you have a spotlight on your house. And that's a violation, and you're charged $25 a day for each day that you have that on.
And you have to cap it at 500.
No, he said, and see, this is, you know, my understanding was what,
he said 500 per violation. is the cap.
Right, so each day is a separate violation.
Yes,
Right.
that's what I understood.
no,
So if it
what I
goes to
understood him to say
50,000,
was
it
that we have a 500, we have a $25 a day fine or $100 a day fine. We can't have a $500 a day fine.
We can't
Anymore than
have,
that.
we can't have a
That's the
$600 a day fine, because 500 is the limit.
Mhm.
But we have to specify that each day of non-compliance is a separate violation. So it's not your spotlight
Yeah.
is on, and after you've ranked up $500 worth of violations, you're done. It's each day is a separate violation. That's where that language originally came from that we had in there too. Like there was another place that had a similar thing where they had a cap. And it was saying like, you don't get capped out on this and then you're done. It's every single day.
And then we need to have that additional things stated in there.
Go back
saying-
to like the
That's what-
version we had like before we met last week when
We
it
had,
was more like,
we had each 30-day,
you know, before that even. We were talking about you're fined $25 a day and then thereafter $100 a day. And then we didn't talk about a limit or a cap. And that was my understanding of what Jake was saying is Your January 1 through January 30, you're $25 a day. January 31st
Mhm.
through the rest of the year is $100 a day, and you just keep
We,
going.
we still are.
So
It's,
there's no limit, right?
But I
As
mean,
long as
right,
you
but it
don't
doesn't
exceed-
say you're you have a
Certain
violation
per
on
day.
January 1st, you have a violation on January
we have,
2nd.
we have to say that though,
As long as
otherwise,
it's in there, you know.
otherwise you can't keep citing every, like,
Yeah.
we have to specify that each day of non-compliance counts as a violation. Otherwise, it's one violation and we can't charge more than $500 for it.
Right. Right, but I think that understanding is incorrect because it's the day, the $500 cap is not,
It's per violation.
it's per day.
It's per violation.
For violation.
That's per violation.
So then,
It could be a
write it how
violation.
you want, and I'll clarify with Jake.
I mean, we had like. That's what the deal was with that as well, is it was each violation.
How do you see that, Kevin? How's yours worded?
We left out penalties.
You're kidding.
Yeah, we did. We talked about doing it. And then, yeah, there were objections to that, you know, that people say it's, you know, peer pressure, you know, try to get people to comply because it's good for the community, good for the wildlife and all that sort of thing. But, yeah, we didn't, yeah, we deliberately chose not to be hard nosed about that,
I think
but.
the difference in our
Hard nosed
populations
voice.
is different because Los Alamos is largely full-time residents. Where
Yes.
we are very few full-time
Yes.
residents and we're bombarded with the
Yeah.
tourism.
No, I think what you're doing is appropriate.
And so this is mostly targeted at some of the egregious businesses, the
Yeah.
car wash, the grocery store,
Right.
and then the short-term rentals.
Yeah. In my original draft for the county, I had penalties in there, you know, but I was persuaded to take them out.
Wow.
So,
It's not gonna happen now.
it's just out of curiosity, I mean, this is a Zoom meeting, right? Are there people out there?
I mean, my husband maybe,
Your husband's out there?
maybe, we'll see.
Okay.
We'll see if he notices that.
Who doesn't have anything in the little
All right,
tool
but there's
at the
no-
bottom, who's.
I was wondering if there were any comments from out.
Oh, I think they also record them and then post them later,
Oh, okay.
maybe.
Oh, no.
Be
So-
recorded and posted later.
Yeah.
So it's in order to wrap things up, then we would take a vote.
Sorry, real quick, are y'all good with that change, that each day of non-compliance? I promise it makes sense.
Okay.
I promise, it's the legalese of it, but it's like,
Is there a way to say there is no limit for the grand total?
I think that's what this
I think
says.
that's implied.
So like, we had before, each 30-day of non-compliance constitutes a separate violation, so every 30 days, they would have been capped at that 500, but this, we are saying that every day is
Is a violation.
a violation, so
Okay.
you can be fined for every day that you were in violation, each of those is a separate violation.
How much? What's our?
We are $100, wait, hold on, was it $25 a day for each day of non-compliance for residential and 100 a day for business, and then after 30 days of non-compliance, they get another notification and it goes up to 100 a day for residential and 300 a day for commercial. So.
Yeah.
Good
I do
with
like
that.
that section, I, every 30-day period constitutes a new violation, that's what you were mentioning.
Well, so we've changed it to each day of
Each day, okay.
non-compliance constitutes a
Good,
separate
I like that
violation.
even better.
Yeah. No, that's good.
So the changes we are proposing, and then you can just say I so move. Is in provision B, general provision C, number I. Number 1, we are changing the total lumen output to 8,000 for residential area, 16,000 for the overlay area, which is business. And then back in definitions, like I said, sorry, we're going out of order. And our definitions, fully shielded will include a reference to 20 degrees, not allowed below, or yeah, not around above the 20 degrees below the horizontal. Okay. And then we are also in section B, H4, we're adding a provision to specify the number of short word, nanometers,
500 meters,
pardon,
500 units.
550,
No, 500.
500.
you said
Shorter
550
than
was
500
better.
Instead of blue
No,
violet. it's
500 is better, the shorter the better.
Okay, 500, okay.
Yeah.
And then, we're changing paragraph C, G to say plans submitted within 180 days prior to the adoption. And then, section E, or sorry, G, paragraph B, penalties, subsection 4, each day of non-compliance separate, constitutes a separate violation. Okay, so are, any other questions or comments? Is our definition of light trespass adequate under definitions?
I would add in there, that, about shielding for downhill properties, you know. So, I'm not sure how to word it, but, I mean, to ensure that no light falls, well, I guess,
Encroachment across property
I
boundary.
guess that's sufficient, actually. I mean, you might put in a clarification, clause in there, or a separate sentence saying for a property that's uphill of another property, that means, extra shielding on the downhill side is required.
Okay, this is in the,
In the
definition section, we may look at that. Okay, so then let's go to the next page, general provisions. Big paragraph B, little paragraph B, light trespass is prohibited. No artificial lighting shall create light trespass.
Right,
And then so you think of further clarification there and say something like including light cast downward from an upper elevation.
I would prefer that in the definition section. Yeah,
Okay, then reiterate what you.
so,
Wording.
okay, artificial lighting that spills over the neighboring properties, blah, 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 causing annoyance or other nuisance, and then separate sentence. Light from an uphill property may require shielding on the downhill side,
Okay.
extra shielding on the downhill side.
Yes,
Yeah, may require extra shielding.
So I have, light from uphill properties may require additional shielding on the downhill side.
That sounds right.
Okay.
And that's part of the motion that gets made. And then you were commenting, I think, Galen, about, and we do have it on, the light bulb itself, the light source not being
Not
visible.
being visible.
We do have that somewhere.
We have it in glare.
Fully shielded. We have it fully shielded.
Mhm.
But we also had it somewhere else, and I looked,
So we have it in glare, and then we also have it in our interior lighting.
Yes.
Where the source is visible from
From another property.
yeah.
right,
Yeah.
okay. So I wanted to let you know that we did have that specific.
Yes,
there.
right.
sorry to back up, but could I get a clarification there? About 500 nanometers, is the wording no fixture or no lighting less than 500 nanometers will be allowed?
Let me find it.
For a very small percentage, I mean,
So I have LED lighting with wavelengths shorter than 500 nanometers, and in parentheses, blue violet, close parentheses, is prohibited.
Okay, so that will put it in the green spectrum. So no blue lighting.
No blue light.
No blue lighting. Okay, very good. I just want to make sure.
And that's pretty succinct. So with these modifications, I'd like to entertain a motion that we substitute or present this to the village council for their review at workshop.
We also come up with a compliance, because we were talking about too short of a compliance scale and was mentioned, we have 3 to 5 years. So,
Oh, okay, sorry, that's,
I'm
are
sorry.
we
say
okay
that-
with our
yeah, what do we have for
the
the
period,
compliance time?
2-year compliance?
I
for
think
residents
so,
and
because
5
we,
years for businesses?
yeah.
So you want to
because
keep it?
I
Good,
think so,
I'm all
we have
for it, I
the-
just was curious.
We're almost done.
we have the 30 days before they have to turn them off anyway, and if they're off at
Okay.
night, honestly.
Okay,
Doesn't
fine.
matter.
Sorry to mention it. I'm all for
No,
it.
you're good, you're good.
I just wanted it to get through the council.
Yeah, so I think this is a case where we can go aggressive.
Yeah.
And if we get pushed back, we can say, yeah, okay, 3 years.
Mhm.
or something.
Yeah, agreed.
That way we get
Understanding.
give and take, they get to win a little. Okay.
Got it. Thank you.
Oh, good.
Regarding the nanometer limit, this is, yeah, some commercial, propaganda from Buddy Stepanov's, from, Crossroads LED. He shows, the light spectrum of a standard LED, which has this
Yeah.
enormous peak in the blue, and the product that he's selling, the Astrophile, has, it really dives down there, so there's really nothing left,
Very
short
good.
of 500.
So that's how they come up with 500. Okay, very good.
Yeah, so that's.
Excellent. Thank you.
And I can forward you, I mean, this is just a marketing email from Buddy Stepanov who, owns,
Yeah, excellent.
yeah, so I can forward you that. too.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
So if there's any further discussion, then we do have a motion to incorporate the changes just discussed, and that will be the version that we send to the village council for their workshop purposes.
I move to do what Shelley said. I'd second.
In favor? Aye. Opposed, okay. And then discussion for process for moving forward. I think Jake pretty well explained that it goes to the workshop, their meeting. We may have to do some give and take, some adjustments. And then from there it goes to their legal department. When they send it on to legal, then I think we need to start getting ready with our PR campaign. And we've talked about using the village's marketing group. Now they have this, what was that newsletter, the Village Voice? In with the water bill, we can use that. We have Gary's handout materials. Well, not only that,
Oh, the
but handout
handouts.
materials that you got from the Dark Sky.
Still
So,
have plenty of them too.
Yeah. so we have some bullet points to get us started, but then when it goes to legal, we'll really start taking action there. So a time and date for the next meeting, I think that would be just to be determined based on the time frame of the village.
We meet at the village next Tuesday,
That's not our meeting though.
but but like.
Yes,
we
yes,
are
please
meeting.
attend if you can, and I'll send that in an email. Please attend next Tuesday, the 27th at 2, unless it gets changed again.
I'll be there.
Okay, good. And I really appreciate you doing that because the technical knowledge and then
Sure.
Mindy's research on having your lights on does not make your house safe. And like this, so many rental houses here, and I can tell, like, when we do our little walk, the lights that are on during the day, it says, no one's here. Because the lights are on during the day.
The other one, I started looking at, deterring wild animals and bears and stuff like that, and found a bunch of information, but like, the only kind of lighting that really works is flashing light in the moment, and also the effect that it has is almost nothing, like you need noise,
Yes.
like other things. But my thought was, like, if you've got one of those spotlights that's so bright you can't see past it, by the time the bear is in that light, it's too late for you. Your time has come.
So if there's no further business, we'll be adjourned at 3:00. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
pleasure, my
We'll
pleasure.
be in touch again.
Yes, and, so the council meets to discuss this next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
And